I'm gonna knock the door open. I'm gonna kick the door open if they don't answer. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm here. I'm Naomi. Like, do you want to meet? Yes or no? You have 5 seconds to answer. Don't regret it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Walk the Talk, a show where I get to have conversations with fellow curious creatives in entertainment and highlight the amazing work of Black women across film, TV, music, and fashion industries. We'll talk about getting started, creative purpose, inspirations, and a bunch of other stuff you may be curious about. Today, I'm joined by Swiss-Ghanaian artist, writer, and model Naomi Larbi. She's worked for brands like Bottega Veneta, Off-White, Dior, Swarovski, and modeled in magazines like Vogue, L'Officiel, and Marie Claire, just to name a few. Thanks so much for being here, Naomi. And I'm so glad that you were able to come across my page somehow and like seeing all the work that you do and just how like multifaceted of an artist you are is just so cool to me. And then finding out that you're like from like Switzerland as well, I was like, this is insane. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Before we, dive straight in, I'm just curious. So I really like dressing in, loud colors or bold like outfits and pattern combinations.
Yeah.
Debatable to whether or not I pull it off all the time, but I
Sorry.
find a confidence in kind of expressing myself boldly, especially since like I've grown up in a lot of white societies where it's like I used to have an afro. They're gonna stare anyway, so like why not, give them something to stare at?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you have a personal style philosophy? And if so, what is it?
It's a good question. I think that I also like to be bold in my own unique way. I think I like to like mix a lot of classically like feminine or masculine clothing items together. Also depending on like the way that my hair is or the way that I'm just feeling that day to day, because I feel that I can be like really fluid in terms of my androgyny. So I like to just play with like stereotypical masculine clothing. With depending on how I'm feeling. And also I'm all for colors. I used to be very just like black minimal, but as I'm getting older, I'm just like, let's go, let's get colorful.
It's
I don't know.
fun.
Fun. Yeah. So I just feel like just, feel how you're feeling that day and then just be that person. Because style is like most fun when it's flexible.
100%. And I feel like for a lot of people, like they say they wear the things of how they want to feel that day, but I actually feel like I like choose something randomly based on just like, trying to put a cute outfit together. And then once I put it on, I'm like, okay, so this is who I am today.
Right. No, totally. Like it's almost like a game of dress up, you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah,
you can manipulate like your energy too through how you dress, you know?
exactly, exactly. All right, so diving straight in, can you briefly introduce yourself in your own words? Because, you're an artist, you're a writer, you're a model. Like, who is Naomi?
I don't know. She's always changing. But yeah, I'm Naomi Larbi. I am a model and a writer and an artist. I would say that I have mostly focused on modeling in the last like 5 years, 5, 7 years. But a big passion of mine is writing and just kind of expressing myself in any way possible through any medium that I can. So I would just say that I'm like kind of a chameleon. And if I find a way that I can express myself and like it feels good, then I'm going to hold on to that. But I'm kind of like always switching between like wanting to have like a really strict bio, and then wanting to keep it open and not wanting to restrict. So yeah.
I love that. It's always fun to like, it's a little nerve-wracking, when people are asking you to define yourself like I just did, but I think it's cool to keep it open because you never know like when different opportunities will come and give you chances to like flex the different sides of yourself, you know?
Exactly. Also, I feel like there's so much like I have imposter syndrome. So like I'm also a producer. But I'm like I love the stuff that I have produced and I'm like really proud of it. And the same kind of goes for my writing, but I kind of feel like in my mind I have this like unreasonably high expectation of myself of like what it means for me to be confident to say that out loud. And I like
Right.
probably will never reach that standard. I think that's like being an artist, you know?
100%.
So I'm just like fighting myself on that all the time.
I mean, yeah, like once you start to define yourself as that, or once you start to like embody that label, realistically, like that's the really the moment that you're gonna become it. because,
That's true.
you know, we're producers, we're writers, we're all this, but if we're like too shy to like tell anybody, then no one's gonna know us for that, you know? So then if we start coming out and like, hi, I'm a writer, yes, thank you. And they're like, oh, that's Sean, she's a writer. Wow. You know?
So true. I think I really needed to have this conversation to hear this, especially now, because I'm planning on moving and I'm like kind of wanting to like take all of these things that are holding me back, like just out of the way and just like be it and own it, you know?
Where are you planning on moving to?
Paris.
Ooh, ooh, lovely, darling.
To Paris, darling.
Parisian adventure. So speaking of Paris, I mean, Paris is huge for the fashion industry, but how did you really get your foot in the door of the fashion industry? Like, what started all of this?
Okay, so my mom was a producer, and as a child, I was on shoots with her a lot. And in LA, I was signed to four models like at 14,
Hmm.
but I wasn't really working. Like, you know, that was like more than 10 years ago. I'm aging myself. And it was still very much like blonde, you know, hyper femme, and I was still rocking the shaved head. So I wasn't really working, and I was more interested in just like finding out who I was. Then when I moved to Berlin in 2015, I got scouted by Ingo at Iconic. And I realized that like in Europe, there's like a whole different world of fashion. It's like high fashion, and my
Mm,
look really fit that much more than it did in LA. So
right.
that's when I really started working more. And then it kind of just took off. I was signed with Barbara at Option in Switzerland in Zurich. Still am, and yeah, so it kind of just started like in Europe, which is interesting because people always think like, oh, why did you move here from LA? They have all the opportunities, but it's a very different way of looking at fashion in LA.
Can you walk me through sort of the casting process of signing with them, and what was it like to take that leap to go from the US over to Europe in search for opportunities?
Well, I kind of have always done the casting process a little bit differently than like a lot of models because I'm kind of like I'm gonna knock the door open. I'm gonna kick the door open if they don't answer. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm here. I'm Naomi. Like, do you want to meet? Yes or no. You have 5 seconds to answer. Don't regret it. Yeah, you know. So I've kind of always like really taken a charge of that situation. So I tend to call or send my pictures and then go in. And I feel like that kind of demonstrated this was like kind of pre Instagram takeoff. That kind of demonstrated like some, I think, a personal strength that I think bookers were like excited about. They're like, oh, she's willing to take charge of her career and she like really wants to be here. But of course, there were so many rejections. I have stories of going to agencies in Berlin where they were just like, wouldn't give me the time of day. And then, 2, 3 years later, I called them and I was like, hey, like I'm looking for a new agency. My name's Naomi. And they're like, we know who you are. Like, come in. And then they signed
Ah,
me. It's like, you know what
yes,
I mean?
yes.
But it's a lot of rejections, but like you just got to stay strong, you know? So I think that's kind of what's helped me this far. And a lot of waiting, there's a lot of fake nice, oh, we love you, we'll call you, like for sure. And then you never hear back. So you kind of get used to getting played by the agencies a little bit. And in terms of taking that leap, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. Just moving from LA. I just felt like I needed to get out, and like some part of me, like having grown up in Zurich and in Europe at a young age during my formative years, I think was craving a bit more of that like realness, because like in LA is just so, all the tropes are true.
Right.
I know I'm like a grandma. I feel like a grandma every time I tell this story. But when I first moved to Berlin, I feel like it was like the mecca. Like everyone was really free to do what they wanted and to be who they were and to explore that in like a much less like defined way. Or like now everyone's kind of defining their niche, or everything has to be defined and expressed in some kind of way. But before
Mm,
it was just unknown,
yeah.
or maybe it was just my youth.
Well, who knows? But I definitely agree that like nowadays, even on the internet, like there's so much emphasis on like packaging themselves for a specific audience versus just being like, okay, sometimes I'm contradictory and messy and sorry. But that's no, that's really cool. And I'm curious as well, you know, with being in an industry that's so, you know, critical of Black women, both in terms of like natural hair or fitting a certain mold or look. How did you kind of find that unwavering confidence when you were just starting out?
That's a good question. I feel like I started a little bit later than the traditional model path. Like I think I was signed at 14, but when I moved to Berlin, I was 20. So I kind of already had a bit of strength in myself in terms of my natural hair. I remember like I wanted to wear weaves, and none of the European bookers were like into it. They're like, you have to have this kind of like fresh off the boat look, or you're not gonna work. And I was like,
Mm,
I remember thinking like, why can't I compete with westernized beauty standards? Like, why do I have to be automatically so categorically to the left or so categorically to the right? Like, I
right.
can't stand next to this girl and have similar features and similar hair, even if it's not natural, and both of us be there. I found that to be odd. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
definitely.
But at the same time, it was a good decision to keep my natural hair at that stage because back then no one really knew how to do black hair. So it was like,
Right. You're like, I've got
it
this.
straightener, and I was like, oh hell no, you know. Now it's a lot better, but then I was like, just for like self protection, I was like, let me just keep the baby afro, like I can just pick it, But at the
Yeah.
same time, it also weird when you go to shoots and they're like spending hours on a white girl's hair, and they do like little concealer and it's like you're done, and I was like, wait, no, like I know I'm beautiful, but I could be more beautiful if you took the time,
Right.
like like I hate this like preconceived notion that like black beauty is automatically effortless.
That's super interesting. Thank you for that answer. It was unexpected, but yeah, no, very, very interesting. Hearing about your experience with like working with people who don't know how to work with black hair or like certain clients that maybe will screw you over, like what are some of the most important things or important aspects that you consider when going into collaborating with a photographer, a magazine, a brand? Like what are the real green flags and red flags that you look out for?
That's a good question too. Green flags are always like an inclusive team,
Hmm.
like a team of multiple ethnicities, multiple skill sets. Green flags are a really strong vision. Like I'm super happy to work with people who have a really strong defined vision, who I know are going to make it work at whatever cost. Like it doesn't have to be a huge budget, but they're like, this is what we want to do. We're going to do this. Because you
Yeah.
can even feel like electricity, and most of the times really great things come out of that. And red flags are mostly just not respecting budgets, trying to undercut a budget. I'm automatically like, no. I'd rather work with a little budget or no budget who's like respecting the other artists and talents on set versus someone who's just kind of trying to take for their own gain. And you can always feel
Right.
that a little.
I saw in another interview that you said when you were younger, you wanted to be a spy, and sort of like the idea of modeling and shooting with different brands and like magazines all over the world, getting to kind of take on new characters. Would you say that that's comparable to kind of being a spy, or is that how it feels to you when you're doing it?
Yes, 100%. Like it feels like I get to enter new worlds, enter new universes, and like if it's a great team, like it's a really elaborate, exquisite universe where they've got the set and the location and hair and makeup and everything is like been planned to the T. So you really feel like you get to like personify different versions of yourself, and it's incredible. I also feel like because I'm a bit spiritual, so like for in terms of manifesting and kind of discovering myself, I feel like it unlocks things because I allow myself to be like these other roles and characters, and then like in my psyche somehow these things kind of like unlock a little bit, and then they float around into like other parts of my normal life where I'm like pulling things.
It's like you're embodying these different parts of yourself that you didn't or wouldn't know that you had, but you're exploring it through the shoots. Like that's super cool. We touched on this a little bit, but you model, you write, you play a little guitar. Like, what would you say is your favorite form of expressing yourself and why?
I think it's still through the written word, because I love the control that I have over expressing myself when I'm writing. I love film. I've only dabbled in it like very, very minusculely, but like that is like a whole nother level of control, because with writing you kind of have to hope and pray and drück deine Daumen, as we say in Swiss German, that the person reading it on the other side of the page is like in a similar state of mind or has similar experiences, or at the very least is like open-minded enough to feel where you're going with the piece, you know. But
Right.
if you have film and you have wardrobe, you have location, you have music, and you have all of these little things you can manipulate to really force your impression or your feeling onto the audience. And I think that that's incredible. But lately I've been going into music because I'm shy of writing. I don't know, like it's interesting. Like I used to be so just like verbal and not care, but now I kind of want to like disguise the way I'm feeling and make it a little bit more nuanced, while still expressing myself.
That's exciting. A new little adventure into a new art form.
Try.
So touching on your writing, you've published essays and poetry in independent magazines like Badlan, Autre, F Magazine, and you've even written a memoir, Extreme Agitation. So would you say that there's any work or any writers that have particularly influenced your writing style and how you kind of found your own creative voice?
Yes. I think actually, like, so I grew up in LA around white people. Let me just like preface by
Right.
saying,
Straight
I
to
think
the chase.
I want to be like James Baldwin because like I love him, but like that wouldn't be the truth. So I think growing up, reading a lot of like Bret Easton Ellis and reading a lot of Bukowski and reading a lot of Henry Miller has really like impacted the way that I write, especially like in terms of kind of just taking what's going on and being really like blunt about it, but trying to find a dry sense of humor,
Mm.
in terms of like my narrative writing. Yeah, I think those three artists or three writers have probably influenced my writing style the most subconsciously, because I think reading those in my teens like is something that I was like, I can do this. I like the pace, I like the cadence. But now I'm really finding myself inspired more by like Anna Eastman, just because it's softer and
Hmm.
it's like less abrasive, and like maybe I'm leaning into that phase of my life too, you know?
Right. So that's kind of also where that music style writing where you're, maybe more metaphorical and that sort of thing is coming into as well, and that softness of painting a softer imagery than, you know, the bluntness of like hard emotions.
Exactly.
Time and a place. I think there's a time and a place for both of them. I think they're both super fun. But
Totally.
that's super interesting. And it's interesting also to hear how like where you grew up and where you were in different um stages of your life, like where location wise influenced the types of things that you were reading and how that then influenced the types of things that you were writing. So, we've talked about you kind of being an all-around artist, creative. But when would you say you feel the most like yourself?
I think I feel the most like myself when I'm like in a completely new place that I've never been before,
Mm.
which is like, kind of problematic. I like being thrown into a situation where like nobody knows me and I don't know my left from my right is when I feel the most centered. I think it's like something that's like a blessing and a curse of like being a model and always traveling and always being in these new environments. I find myself getting stuck really quickly, if I have like, too rigid of a routine, you know. So like if I'm just completely exploring something for the first time, I feel the most like grounded because I my awareness comes out in a really sharp way, and like none of my like mental blocks of like what am I gonna do today or la 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 comes to the forefront of my mind.
I think I completely agree. I've moved around a lot recently and I just moved to Lisbon like a month ago.
Yes.
And so I'm like in that area right now of kind of like I don't know anybody in the city, but I'm meeting all new people and I'm trying to figure my shit out at the same time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun because then you just kind of show up as yourself and see who vibes, see what you can kind of create, see what you can explore both within yourself and like the city around you. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Even though, yeah, maybe it is slightly chaotic, slightly toxic. I don't know. It's fine, I think.
I remember thinking back like in high school when people would write like never change. And I was like, isn't that's part of the reason I moved to Berlin. I was like, I feel like this is so stagnating, like having these groups of people who have this like impression of who you're supposed to be and like subconsciously, consciously like imposing that on you. Kind of feels like it's stifling to growth. But if you're just like showing up for yourself first and foremost, like then like new facets of yourself can just emerge, you know? People mean well when they want you to stay the same because that means they love and value the you that they see. But at the same time, it can be kind of constricting.
Definitely. And I mean, I feel like change is like a necessary evil. And then the reason I say evil is just because like before it happens, it can feel like super scary and super destabilizing. But then that's how you know even more that it's like necessary. But then once you take the step to make a change, whether that's moving to a new place, starting a new job, doing whatever, then you kind of get to recenter yourself and like redefine yourself without like these other expectations that you both hold for yourself or that other people in your life that love you hold for you. And yeah, you're kind of freed from that and you can just branch out. This is kind of a broad question. Feel free to answer it with as long or as short of an answer as you want. But what would you say has been the most rewarding part for you about being a Black creative in fashion and the arts?
I think the most rewarding part has been being able to be like able to give representation. The lack of representation that I remember feeling as a young girl or a teenager, like going through Nylon magazine and Vogue, like I didn't even realize how internalized it was. But like now having like younger girls like in Ghana or something reaching out to me and feeling like, oh, like I can do this. Like I see she's done it and being able to like talk to them and then being able to see like more and more diversity and being able to see representation. Like I was just in the airport and I don't remember what the brand was, but it was like this beautiful black man, huge ad, beautiful black man with a drum looking up into the camera, so piercing. And like I'm literally getting like this visceral reaction, like so like emotional thinking about it because I was like, wow, like I feel like that's beautiful, you
Yeah.
know?
You feel like seen.
Yeah. And like for such a long time, even now, like I don't particularly feel seen. So being able to like see more and more inclusiveness and more representation, like especially in like what it means to be black and like not to have these like super rigid stereotypes of, you know, what a black man or a black woman is like that's accepted in the media and seeing that like slowly change, like it's just incredible.
It is
I'm
incredible.
emotional.
Yeah, you're making me tear up as well. It is incredible because I feel like not only has representation gotten better and still like needs to improve, but with every kind of creative or model or actor or writer, like every person that's added to the scene adds a different facet of, you know, the Black lived experience. And so I feel like there can never be enough, you know, like it's we've gotten to the point where there's so many pieces of art, there's so many pieces of like content out there in the world. And as you said, like I completely grew up the same way of like you're so used to seeing a lack of representation that you don't even notice that you're internalizing it. But I want to get to that point for, you know, future Black girls where they've internalized the fact that they, like, of course they would be in a magazine. You know what I mean? You know, Caribbean diaspora, African diaspora, like, there's so many different experiences that are all encompassed in, like, being a Black woman or being a Black man. And yeah, we've got a long way to go for, like, actually fulfilling all of the different types of representation. So it is super, super exciting to see like that come into fruition and, you know, be a part of that development. Like you are a part of changing the narrative. So thanks to you.
No, it's you too.
We are almost done, but I just want to end with a little rapid fire question section.
Sure.
No stress. So you've traveled all over the world for shoots, but if you could go back to one destination to live in, which would you choose?
Honestly, like literally like hot take, but Moscow pre-war. I love living in Moscow.
Really?
Pre-war Moscow was the shit. I had so much fun. It was like the people were just incredible. There was like three black people in the whole city. That
Right. And you were one of them.
was one exactly. But I got all the jobs, so it wasn't so bad.
Right.
And I just wish I had like a little bit longer to like play that out before the war had happened. You know, I had like a proper living. I think that's probably why I feel like it was like kind of taken away from me and obviously so many other people.
Mm.
So yeah.
In less than 5 words, can you describe your pre-shoot routine or your vibe pre-shoot? What's going through your head?
Headphones, cigarettes, do not care.
Love, love. Dead brain, nothing going on.
Just like vibe.
What is one part of the industry that you were taken aback by or shocked by when you first started? Something that was just completely different than you thought it would be.
How long it takes to get paid?
That's that's
Yo,
real. That
yo,
is real.
like what do you like? What do you mean? Like, I remember when I started, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna like pay my bills. Like, I can't pay my bills on like an invoice. Like, I'm like, you pay
Right.
his fucking invoice, guys. Like, this
Right,
is
right, right. They're
crazy.
like, we'll get this to you in 3 months.
And
Um,
you're like, I just started. Like, maybe after a year, when like every month, like there's something rolling in, you're okay. But the first year, it's like, what do you mean? What do
that's
you mean?
crazy. Yeah.
I'd always like, can you like Venmo me? Like, can you just PayPal me like for this? And they're like, don't you make more money than us? And I'm like, yeah, like theoretically.
Please, please, please. You're like, please, just any coins, please, just give me
Look
something.
it up. I need some dinner.
Okay, next question. Oh my God, I'm crying. Who is your personal fashion icon?
I don't know. Like, I want to say just designers, but like that's there.
You
That's
could say
not it.
designers.
Really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because there's a person behind each brand.
I really like young Raf Simons.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I really like what he was doing when in Antwerp and like just how like punk and underground it was, but also like so clean. Julia. I'm just trying not to
Julia?
say Julia Fox. I'm just trying not to say Julia Fox right now.
Right, no,
I
say her. Give her
Julia.
her, give her her flowers, Julia Fox.
She's getting too many flowers.
That's true.
I love her, like young mom, like doing her thing, wild, reckless. Like I just love it.
You're like, she's just like me. All right, and then last question. So, when your photo appeared in Vogue magazine, you joked that you could quit modeling, you're done, you could retire. So if you could map out your next opportunity and it was 100% guaranteed to be yours, what would you do? What would be the job?
I would love to open YSL.
I
So good.
like that for you.
Thank you. It's like the perfect mix of like punk and chic and elegant. Um, like understated, overstated at the same time. Super interesting, like juxtaposition between like grunge and like heroin chic, which is like what I grew up loving with like, Kate Moss and all of that. But also just so clean and like sophisticated, like you can't touch me.
I love that. Untouchable energy.
Exactly. I love the villain's fashion. Like I just kind of love it.
Right. That's so fun. Alrighty, well, thank you so much. This was lovely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.